Welcome, modern day mystics, fellow truth seekers, James and Justin, back again with another reaction video. And in this one, we're going to take another look at Project Shivoham and the video titled A Brief History of 18 Puranas. Now we've looked at the Vedas, the Upanishads, now it's time for these holy scriptures, so let's dive on in. Intro.
If we take a deeper look into the knowledge systems that we have in the forms of Vedas, Puranas, Upanishads, Agama Shastras or Siddhanta, so on and so forth, there are three very important standards that are incorporated in structuration, articulation and propagation of these knowledge systems. The first one is factoring in a rhythm into the linguistics, that is through Chanda Shastram, to make it easily memorizable. I spoke at length about this topic in many of my previous documentaries. Moving to the second one, being aphoristic in nature. That is by leveraging a very unique property of Sanskritam that allows you to encode complex meanings into the shortest form of the sentences in Sanskrit. And coming to the third one, being dialectical. And this is the most beautiful of the all three, because 1 and 2 need a bit of scholarship into Sanskritam, but the third one is being dialectical in a simple storytelling format where characters exchange the ideas or indulge in a conversation, discourse. It's all about storytelling. So stories are a very powerful means of communication in the history of mankind, and that exactly is what is incorporated as the third standard in the Bharatiya knowledge systems. And just to be clear, these are not written somewhere, these are my observations throughout my research. So in this video, we're going to delve deep into the dialectical aspect of it. And nothing comes above Puranas when it comes to being dialectical in any of the knowledge systems. Because Puranas is all about conversations, stories. Yes, there are a lot of mythical stories as well, to say it upfront. But let us try to understand what is in the 18 Puranas as part of this short video, a brief history of the 18 Puranas. Let's get started. Starting with the basics and semantics. It is called as puranam, not Puran or Purana. Those are the variations in Hindi or any other language. But the real name in Sanskritam is Puranam. Next, what is a Puranam? Sargosyatha visargascha vritti rakshamtarani cha vamso vamsanucharitam samstha heturapasrayaha dasabhir lakshanair yuktam puranam tadvido viduhu kechit panchavidham brahman mahadalpa vyavasthaya. These are the words of Suta Maharshi from Srimad Bhagavatam.
You can hear that rhythmic part that he mentioned in it. Yeah.
Bhagavatam, explaining what are the qualities that a scripture need to have to be called as a Purana. And there are 10 such characteristics, starting with the first one. Sarga, history of the creation of cosmos. Number 2, Visarga, history of the creation of life. Number 3, Vritti, history of the evolution of life. Number 4, Raksha, history of the sustenance of life. Number 5, Antarani, history of the time scales. Number 6, Vamsha, history of the lineages. Number 7, Vamsanucharita, history of the dynasties of the kings. Number 8, Samstha, history of the catastrophes. Number 9, Hetu, history of the prime causation. Number 10, Apasrayaha, history of the supreme being.
Just a question out there, for it to be considered a puranam, did it just have to embody one of those, or did it have to have all of them? There's just a question out there to throw it. Let us know in the comments if you happen to know.
If a scripture has these 10 qualities, which is all about recording the history over these 10 aspects over millions of years in terms of Mahayugas and Kalpa cycles, such a scripture is called as a Puranam. I will take the bull by its horns. First question is, are we conflating history with mythology? History is an account of what happened in the past, where it can be proved beyond doubt, saying that it happened. Whereas mythology, there is a scope for illusion or some sort of things that we don't really comprehend about the past. That is mythology. Are we conflating history and mythology? That you and me don't have to debate. The name itself is given categorically in two different ways. Itihasa is given as a name for Sri Ramayana and Mahabharatam, where they are deemed and revered as exact historical accounts. Whereas Puranas are never called as Itihasas. They are called Puranas for a reason, which is meant to be a historical account, but at the same time there are many elements which are metaphysical or spiritual or scientific. So a long story short, Puranas are a compendium of various ideas and different aspects beyond just the history. But the prime purpose is to document the history. That's the max I can say. I don't want to give a sweeping statement about Puranas or the historical accounts or mythological accounts. It's up to you how you would like to take. The reason I called this a documentary is I want to put forward facts in which they are, and it's up to you the way you want to take them. Another basic question is, how many Puranas are there? There are 18 of them. Pretty much all of us know it, but where is this coming in from? These slokas are the OG of all the Puranas, the 18 of them. All written by Sri Vedavyasa Maharshi. Brahmam Padmam Vaishnavam cha Saivam Lingam Sagarudam Naradiyam Bhagavatam Agneyam Skanda Sangitam Bhavishyam Brahmavaivartam Markandeyam Vamanam Varaham Mastyam Kurmam cha Brahmandakyam iti Trisat. Read the last word of this slokam. It says Trishat. Trishat means 3 times 6. That is 18 are the Puranas. And they are Brahma Puranam, Padma Puranam, Vaishnava Puranam, Shiva Puranam, Linga Puranam, Garuda, Narada, Bhagavata, Agni, Skanda, Bhavisha, Brahmavaivarta, Markandeya, Vamana, Varaha, Mastya, Kurma Puranam, and Brahmanda Puranam. These are the 18 Puranas. And let's try and see in the next couple of minutes what is there in each of these Puranas. Before we get started, I want to say something. Each of these Puranas have thousands of slokas and some hundreds of chapters. It has couple of books. It's not just one book. Every Purana has at least 6 to 7 books, in some cases 10, 15 as well. So it's a collection of lot of books, thousands of slokas and hundreds of chapters. And what I'm going to present as a synopsis of each Purana is just my observation, which I handpicked to be sensibly and reasonably representing the essence of the entire Purana. It is not complete, for obvious reasons. It's an ocean, but I tried my best just to present a very high level synopsis of each of these Puranas for all the 18. Starting with the first one, Brahma Purana. Brahma Puranam details about the sequence of Manvantaras and the events that have happened in those Manvantaras. A Manvantara is a very large scale unit of time measurement in Bharat which spans across millions of years. And there are 14 such Manvantaras which are cyclical in nature, and Brahma Puranam details about the sequence of these Manvantaras and the events happened in those Manvantaras. Brahma Puranam speaks at length about Surya Vamsam, the emperors and the kings and the kingdoms that emanated out of the Surya Vamsam. Brahma Puranam details about the geography of the ancient world, its territorial composition and continents. It talks at length about Jambudvipam, which is roughly equivalent to the southern half of the Asia and Europe together. Largely inheriting from the Vedic philosophies, Brahma Puranam establishes the principles and practice of yoga. Brahma Puranam also deliberates about the philosophy of Sankhya Yoga that was established by Kapila Maharshi, which tries to understand the fabric of this universe and cosmos in a very rational way, and most importantly, in an atheistic manner. To emphasize a bit more on Sankhya Yogam, if one tries to read and understand Sankhya Yogam, you'll get a picture of how open-minded is the culture of Bharat. Brahma Puranam also gives the account of Shiva Parvati Kalyanam, the destruction of Daksha Yajnam, Sri Krishna's life history. Brahma Puranam also details at extensive length about the Shraddha Karma and other sacred rites to the Pitrudevas or the departed ancestors. And finally, Brahma Puranam also gives a lot of prophecies and predictions about how Kali Yugam would unfold.
I was just going to say, there's so much in this Brahma Puram.
Yeah,
Puranam.
It was making
Puranam.
me think about, like, if you were one of these sages or one of these people who was assigned the task to, like, learn this stuff. I'm betting you might feel a little lonely because there's probably very few people that have, like, a lot of this sweet, like, knowledge, like, as embedded in part of their life, because there's so much. There's hundreds of chapters. This is the first one. There's 18 of them.
Oh, man.
An ocean of info.
And it actually establishes something to me, like, thank reality, God, whatever, for the day of information, the internet that we're actually in. I know there's some bad stuff, everybody.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, you're right. In the day, you can imagine that some guy would be like, that's his yoga or that's his karma or whatever, is that he's got to learn all this stuff. And he might have to learn it alone, and he's like walking around with the secrets to the universe. And it actually maybe takes away from his spiritual path a little bit. He's like, he can recite all of it.
Yeah.
But I think there's somebody else that could have access to this, both then and now,
Yeah.
that would be like, see what the significance of what it really is saying, and like unlock the door to
Yeah, I know.
the reality behind the facade that you see, and have deep
And
knowledge.
who knows, man? 100 years from now, it might be like the Matrix. You might plug in and be like, download the Puranas into me. And like, who knows where we'll be with the way that we can consume information. Because it's really hard if you got to sit down and read everything, and it's in different languages, and you got to learn like the different meanings from, Sanskrit and stuff like that, right? But I'm excited for that, to see like where we get in the next few years for how we consume information. It's already accelerating. The fact that we can even sit here and react to a video like this.
This is already what you're talking about. It'll advance so it's more efficient, but it's
yeah.
already some degree. You know how often I put something on while I'm doing work? I'm animating or something, or doing some task, and I'll be listening to an audio book or listening to something like this, and it's just little by little trickling in. I don't have to cloister myself up and just learn all this over and over and over so I can pass the torch, alone, like you're saying. We can share this knowledge now and like point out the things that stand out to us that are mind-blowing, and go in and extract it.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot more here, so let's continue on.
We just got started here.
In short, is all about Brahma Purana, the first of all the 18. Number 2, Padma Puranam. Padma Puranam explains about the birth of Lakshmi Devi and many other akhyanas about Lakshmi Devi. Padma Puranam again details about the destruction of Daksha Yajnam, lineages of Devas and Danavas, and very interestingly, Padma Puranam explains at length about Sri Ramayana. It can be divided into 2 parts. One is the missing chapters of Sri Ramayana. The 6 Kandas of Sri Ramayana, what we have, from Balakanda till Yuddha Kanda, it is pretty much in a very linear timeline. The events are explained in a very linear format as the time progresses. But not everything is documented in these 6 Kandas. Certain chapters or certain events that happened during this linear timeline of Balakanda to Yuddha Kanda are documented in Padma Puranam, which you will not find in Sri Ramayana. For example, Sri Rama meeting Markandeya Maharshi. Such kind of events are not elaborated in Sri Ramayana of Valmiki, but are elaborated in the Padma Puranam written by Vyasa Maharshi. And then the most interesting part about Sri Ramayana is the Uttara Ramayana. So Padma Puranam also elaborates at length about the events of Uttara Ramayana as well. This I presented at great detail in my documentary on Uttara Ramayana. Uttara Ramayana is very much an integral part of the entire Ramayana, and Padma Puranam reinforces just that. So Uttara Ramayana is explained at great detail in Padma Puranam. Padma Puranam also elaborates about various pilgrimage sites across Bharat, mountains, rivers and oceans on the earth, the wars of Devas and Asuras, afterlife journey of the Atma or the departed soul. Significance of each Ekadashi is elaborated at length in Padma Puranam. So this, in short, is all about what is in Padma Puranam. Number 3, Vishnu Purana. Vishnu Puranam details about time division and measurement, from as small as micro nanosecond level measurement up until millions of years, wrapped up in the time units of Kalpas and Mahayugas. Vishnu Puranam mathematically defines the smallest unit of the time up until the largest one for time division and time measurement. Vishnu Puranam also talks at length about the lineages of kings of Bharata Varsha. It also details about the future or the forthcoming Manus and Manvantaras. It explains the structuration of all the 4 Vedas and the composition and contents of the Vedas, why they are divided in the way they are today. Rig, Yajur, Sama and Atharvana Vedas. It explains about the structure, contents and the composition. Vishnu Puranam also elaborates about the 28 Vyasa Maharshis that we have till now, who in each Dwapara Yuga constituted the Vedas and many other knowledge systems and passed down towards their Sishya Parampara. Vishnu Puranam also elaborates about the sacred rituals that a Grihastha should observe. It continues to illustrate about various dynasties like Puru, Kuru, Turvasu and many more. It also talks about the legend of Prahlada, the legend of Dhruva, 12 Adityas and significance of each Aditya for each of the month of the year. Vishnu Puranam also talks about how Buddha came down as an avatar of Vishnu with the positive intention of opposing Vedas. And Vishnu Puranam also says that Buddha avatar happened not just once but couple of times in a cyclical manner. It also talks in great detail about the life history of Sri Krishna, various sacred rituals in the worship of Sri Mahavishnu. It also talks about the history of Badrinath and many other important places across Bharat. That in short is all about Vishnu Puranam. Before I move on, let me touch on a very important subject, Sri Mahavishnu coming down in the avatar of Buddha to oppose Vedas. In Vishnu Puranam, Buddha is not portrayed in any negative manner. He is very much revered, respected and portrayed as an avatar of Sri Mahavishnu, which came down with a positive intention and a very good purpose to oppose Vedas in a certain context. We'll not get into that space, but what I want to tell you is, if opposition of Vedas is deemed as a negative aspect, then naturally anyone who opposes Vedas will also be seen in a negative light. But that is not the case here. Sri Mahavishnu, who came down in the avatar of Buddha to oppose Vedas, is revered and respected. How do you reconcile these two? For that, one has to do a deep reading into the scriptures, and maybe if time permits, I will try to do a bit more detailed documentary on Buddha alone. But the point what I'm trying to say is, don't fall into the trap of these religious and political jokers who say that Buddhism is opposed by Hinduism and it is the Brahmanical hegemony which did so, and all this nonsense. These jokers would have never read the scriptures and their views are loaded with bias and motivation, period. If you want to know the truth, read for yourself the similarities or the history of Buddhism and Sanatana Dharma. They are so very intertwined and complement each other. Number 4. Shiva Purana. Shiva Puranam illustrates the origins of Shiva in the form of Agni Stambham, the conflict between Sri Mahavishnu and Brahma. It talks about the sacred rituals of Shiva Lingam. It talks about the Shiva Tattvam, the philosophy of Shiva. It again elaborates about the description of Jambu Dvipam and many other geographical locations in Bharat and around Bharat. It talks about Shiva and Sati Devi Kalyanam, destruction of Daksha Yajnam, Shiva and Parvati Kalyanam, the human anatomy and embryology. What is the anatomy of a human body and how the embryo gets developed month on month in the womb of a mother. A very detailed biological and embryological account of the development of human fetus is illustrated in Shiva Mahapuranam. Shiva Puranam also elaborates on the birth of Kartikeya, the birth of Ganesha, the origins of Kala Bhairava, the origins of 12 Jyotirlingas, and the birth of Nandishwara. This, in short, is all about the contents of Shiva Puranam. Number 5. Bhagavata Purana. It is also called as Srimad Bhagavatam. Bhagavata Puranam starts where Mahabharatam ends. It elaborates about the end of Mahabharatam and its aftermath. It talks about the history of Parikshit Maharaja, start of Kali Yugam and how it would unfold. Bhagavata Puranam also elaborates the account of the conversation between Uddhava and Vidura before their final departure. Bhagavata Puranam also gives us the account of the legend of Varaha Avataram, the legend of Kardama Prajapati and his progeny, the mythical geography of the world, Jambudvipam and the 7 continents, the legend of Narasimha Swami, the legend of Kshirasagara Madhanam, complete story of Sri Ramayana. Yes, you heard that right. The complete Sri Ramayana is elaborated in Bhagavata Puranam as well. The legend of Parasurama and the complete life history of Sri Krishna. These are the contents of Bhagavata Puranam. Up next, and number 6, Narada Puranam. Narada Puranam elaborates about the structure and duties of Varna Ashrama Dharma. This is very important. Instead of reading half-educated literatures from politicians or religious people or whatnot, if you want to understand how the Varna Ashrama Dharma was structured, I would suggest you to turn to authentic scriptures like Narada Puranam. Having said that, to be very clear, Varna Ashrama Dharma is a socio-economic governance structure in the ancient Bharat. It may or may not apply in today's world. If you want to learn Vedas, no one's stopping you. Don't take these half-educated statements of Brahmanical hegemony or anything of that sort. It all depends on what interest you have to learn the truth. So I suggest and I repeat, instead of reading the half-educated literatures from politicians and other religiously motivated people, if you want to understand how Varnashrama Dharma was actually structured, I would suggest you to turn to these ancient authentic scriptures, not with an intention to observe that today, but just to understand how it was structured back then. Next, Narada Puranam also elaborates about the legend of Markandeya Maharshi. It elaborates the significance of river Ganga, the legend of Vamana Avataram, the legend of Yamadharma Raja, and also elaborates about the sacred rituals of Shraddha Karma towards...
The narrator seemed to really put an emphasis on this one, the Narada Puranam, because, well, the first one's, it's fascinating because I've learned now that if you want to find out about the gods, Vishnu, Brahma, or Shiva, you can find out in the first 6 chapters There's like all those stories, even Krishna.
So much in those first chapters.
In those first chapters about the gods. So it's good to know. I've learned something new. Now I know where to go looking for those stories if I want to read them myself. But he seemed to put a lot of focus on this one here.
You know what's interesting is at one point where he was calling interesting again that insult emerges jokers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because in some of my other videos, I noticed that some people their go-to thing is to call people clowns or jokers, and that's just a fascinating thing I notice.
Yeah.
It's always that archetype. But anyway, the thing that when he was saying to people that sometimes they present the information in this way or something, right?
Yeah,
it got me to sort of thinking about in other religious texts. And I'm wondering, maybe some of you who follow this can let me know if there's like famous scriptures that everybody likes to go to, like you know in Christianity, like John 3:16, for God so loved the earth. And then there's the whole books of the Bible that get less attention. You know, sometimes they're just a chronology, but somebody goes and learns the book of Numbers. And first of all, I want to say kudos to whoever goes to try to learn all of it so that they actually know everything that's there. And if you could mention something significant about doing that you've found, is going to the lesser known texts and going through them and learning what ends up standing out as opposed to the more famous stuff. What exactly is it about there that you might find that's sort of secret, like a defense, you know, an apologetic for
it's so buried in there, like almost no one even knows it's there.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, good stuff. And it'll be interesting to see what he says. Like, I guess he had mentioned in this one why he feels it has to do with the duties and the structures of the faith. I guess this chapter 6 here. But anyway, we'll continue on.
The Pitru Devas, or the departed ancestors. Up next, at number 7, Markandeya Puranam. Markandeya Puranam is the most detailed of all the 18 on Varnashrama Dharma, even more than Narada Puranam. It has thousands of slokas elaborating on Varnashrama Dharma. So like I just said, this is also a very important ancient scripture should you be interested to understand the Varnashrama Dharma. It also elaborates about the forms of marriage and the rituals, the human relationships, how to cultivate and nurture human relationships, what types of vegetarian food and what types of non-vegetarian food is permitted for different ashramas is elaborated in Markandeya Purana. Yes, you heard that right. Markandeya Puranam elaborates about what types of non-vegetarian food is permitted for what kinds of people. When I'm saying kinds of people, I'm referring to the Varnashrama structure. Sanatana Dharma is not a monolithic rock. It is a flower that has 1000 petals, with each petal of different color. And the reason I say that is because of the misconception that we have about non-vegetarian food. It is permitted for certain kind of people under certain context. Moving next, worship of Adi Shakti is also elaborated in Markandeya Purana. The legends of Dattatreya, the legend of Agni Deva, the legends of Vishnu and Brahma, the philosophy of yoga, the higher spiritual practices in yoga, dangers of mishandling yoga. This is very important. Pranayamena yuktena sarvaroga kshayo bhavet, ayuktabhyasa yogena sarvarogasya sambhavaha. This is what Hatha Yoga Pradipika says about yoga. For instance, if you take pranayama, if you perform it under the good guidance of a well-learned teacher, then it can cure a lot of diseases. But if you practice yoga or pranayama without having proper knowledge, it can bring in new diseases. This is what the sloka that I just said establishes. So Markandeya Puranam also elaborates about the dangers of mishandling yoga. Today it has become a fashion that everybody is a yoga teacher. They're just mushrooming everywhere. Markandeya Puranam elaborates about the dangers of practicing yoga under misguidance. And finally, Markandeya Puranam also illustrates the life of a typical yogi. That, in short, is all about Markandeya Puranam.
I'm starting to get a sense of the vastness, the tomes of information here, you know?
Yeah.
And it reminds me a little bit of like legal paperwork, you know? Like I know somebody who just so happens to be like, I think he's Indian, and he's a lawyer, and he's a lawyer. And any interaction I've ever had with law, like legal books of laws, you know, you can become well versed in the law to the point where it's more about how much you know and how you can because of what you know,
Okay.
how you know, there's so much in there that at any time you could like pull out some hidden thing and be like,
yeah.
but this is said here, and it's like,
Yeah.
damn, you know, because you might be misled and think you're supposed to be vegetarian. Someone's like, actually, you haven't been reading your Puranam. There's another part that says that you can be this, right?
Yeah.
And with so much information, there's probably, I don't know if there's a verse in there or not. I don't want to speculate.
Not the
but-
only one. This is common. Like in Judaism, they have the Torah, but they have like all. Remember when we were studying Judaism, they have like all those other books that expand upon that. In Islam, they have the same thing with the Quran. I forget what they call it, but they have their like books that like pick apart. And it's the same thing with Christian commentaries, whatever religion, because it feels like when you get a structure of information, it's like everything. Because life is not black and white, it has to accommodate to all the scenarios that get influenced under that law. So then they're like, oh, we didn't think of that. So now we have to create like a subsect, part A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all the way down to Z. And so it just goes on and on and on.
So just like I gave an invitation to the person to come in here and in defense explain why it's good to know about the less popular, less heard of scriptures,
Yeah.
I want somebody to point out their version of this, okay? Because in the Bible, there's Christ said the greatest commandment was to love your neighbor as yourself. You know, what commandment's greater than all this? If you just love your neighbor as yourself and love God with all your heart, you've done the whole thing. It covers everything that's there, right?
Yeah.
I'm wondering, so maybe somebody knows, for on the other side of the argument, what this scripture is that can sum all the things up in one thing, you know? Because maybe there is. I don't even know. I don't know.
Is there one law within Hinduism that sums everything up into
like,
one pretty bow?
Attention is all you need to know, and that will cover the all the Vedas.
And I accept it if there's not, because someone might be like, no, we don't do that here.
Sure. And for sure. If they say no, then the answer's no, and we'll continue to listen and try to learn as much as we can. But I see a thing, just like in law, that you can pay a good lawyer that actually knows more law stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, some guy would be like rifling through his paperwork, like, I don't have a defense for that, Your Honor. Yeah. And then some other guy that's like, I've been up all night studying my law, so I actually know how to do it.
Well, yeah.
This is what happens with endless rules.
You can start looking at like ways to justify, or like, there's so much information. I need to justify why I did what I did, even though it broke violation rule 17 subsector B. I can look back on,
Right, and I speak Christianese, so just to screw up someone's day, I can be like, have you not heard that ye are gods? Just like the Bible says, you know what I mean? Like, I could say something weird did you know satyrs are in the Bible? Or I don't even know if there are, but just people find little things to trip people up with, like they're practicing law.
Yeah, I hear you. All right, well, anyway, we continue on.
Up next, number 8 is Agni Puranam. It elaborates the legend of Matsya-avataram, Varaha-avataram, Kurma-avataram. It also elaborates about the history of Sri Rama, the history of Sri Krishna, Mahabharatam in brief, the sacred rituals in the worship of Sri Mahavishnu, the temple architecture and engineering, how to construct temples, what kind of architecture needs to be employed for what kinds of temples is elaborated in Agni Puranam. Consecration of the Murti, Prana Pratishta in the temples, Ayurvedic plants and their medicinal benefits is also elaborated at great detail in Agni Puranam. And then planetary significances and astronomy, statecraft and public administration, what kinds of policies the king should incorporate to protect his subjects in the kingdom. It talks a lot about public administration. Agni Puranam also elaborates about archery, weapons, martial arts, strategies of warfare, lineages of many ancient kings and dynasties. It talks about Chanda Shastram and Natya Shastram as well. And finally, it also talks about the Varnashrama Dharma structure. That, in short, are the contents of Agni Puranam. Up next, number 9 is Bhavisha Purana. Bhavisha Puranam, as the name suggests, it's all about the prophecies of the future, mostly. However, in summary, Bhavisha Puranam talks about the sacred rites for the dead and the departed. It talks about the worship of Aditya or Surya. Vyasa Maharshi, through Bhavisha Puranam, prophesies that in Kali Yugam there will be emergence of Mlecha and Pashanda cults, which will create havoc around the world, and how they will unleash death and destruction and inflict suffering on the people. And in Bhavisha Puranam, it is also elaborated about the various kings and dynasties that would be coming in future. That in short.
So many religions with an end time that looks like
It's going to be bad.
yeah.
Oh yeah, I hate it. I don't like it when things are, not that I hate these scriptures. I'm just saying I don't like this, like, always prophesying negativity to be the end, because everyone, it's always negative.
You can't fight the tide. Almost all of them.
Yeah,
the religions that we love and our brethren and our sister out there in the internet world. All the religions are it ends in doom.
Yeah.
You know, and then sometimes there'll be like for those that did it right and actually listened and did what they were supposed to according to their religion, BT dubs. Then they get to go to heaven and, you know, all the things of the past. I'm not saying that there isn't a purification and a renewal. I'm not disregarding that that's the case. But I'm saying, let's say it's the year 2024 and somebody was like, guess what? I'm starting the first religion. It's the religion of pop culture. And you know what? In the end, it's a happy ending. Is it like, well, you're the evil cults that they're talking about? Positivity? No, get back to your hole and flagellate yourself in silence and starve yourself and suffer. Yeah. You know, like, I'm not trying to be a smart aleck. I'm saying that, you know, the religion I follow, I want it to be one where it's like, fine, if you need it to end in the end of the world, if you need a great mount to fall into the sea and boil the fish and all this stuff, then I will be in a path where I will not allow myself to suffer through that, where through my eyes it will be heavenly and heaven on earth. I want to reach towards heaven. I don't want to be stuck in the land of the dead and project calamity afore me and need it to come true.
Yeah,
need it to, otherwise it's been a giant waste of time. You know how much I've invested into this? It better end in calamity.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
And I respect everybody's opinions and stuff like that, but, you know, I'm a keen judge of character, and sometimes I can tell when somebody wants me to get mine for not thinking the same way they think.
Yeah.
You know, I hope that it's refreshing. I hope that the lessons that gets taught here at Stay Spiritual Studios is to, like, be able to, like, flow in all of it, you know, accept all these religions. Let's just add it to the jambalaya and out of that alchemize something worthy of heaven, you know, worthy of the kingdom to come. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying?
Well said.
What is about Bhavisha Purana. Up next in number 10 is Brahmavaivarta Purana. This Puranam extensively focuses on Sri Krishna and Radha Devi. It elaborates at extensive length about the legend of Radha and Krishna, the esoteric philosophy of Radha Krishna, significance of cows, origin of the creation, origin of the Manus and his progeny, various Prajapatis and their progeny, the worship of Saraswati, Lakshmi and many other gods and goddesses, the punishments of Atma post-death, the discourse of Yamadharma Raja, complete history of Sri Krishna and how Dwaraka got submerged in the ocean. These are the important aspects that Brahmavaivarta Puranam elaborates. Up next, number 11 is Linga Puranam. Linga Puranam elaborates about the genesis of creation, the esoteric philosophies of Shiva. This is very important. The entire Shiva Tattvam is very much condensed and concentrated in Linga Puranam, the esoteric philosophies of Shiva. The origins of Aghora, the origins and philosophy of Aghora is detailed in Linga Puranam. Then comes the origins of Nandi, geography of the ancient world, geography of Bharat and geography of Jambudvipam, the 8 forms of Shiva, the science of music. This is very important. The science of music, the reason I use the word sciences in Linga Puranam, it is explained at great detail as to how each musical note is positioned the way it is. What sort of experience each frequency and each note will invoke in a human when we listen to that specific note. It is mind-blowing the way it is articulated, and any one of you who has interest in music, I would really recommend go through Linga Puranam, this aspect where it elaborates the Sangeeta Shastram in a very scientific manner. And then Linga Puranam also elaborates about the sacred rituals and Dana Dharmas, the solar system and influence of sun on other planets, enumeration of various Shivalingas across Bharat. This, in short, is all about Linga Puranam. Up next, number 12 is Varaha Puranam. Varaha Puranam elaborates about the origins of Ashwini Devas, origins of Durga, origins of Dharma, geography of Jambudvipam again, and the origins of the mythical mountain of Meru, geography of Kraunchadvipam, geography of Shakadvipam, and geography of Kushadvipam. The Krauncha, Shaka, Kushadvipas, these are the continents which roughly talk about America, Africa, parts of Europe, and Asia as well. Before jumping to any conclusions or assuming anything wild, what I would suggest is we need to read the scriptures to understand what was the worldview of people back then. It may match to what it is today or may not, but the least that we should be doing is read it and then form an opinion. Varaha Puranam elaborates on the geographical composition of various continents. It calls them with different names, like I just said, Kraunchadvipam, Shakadvipam, Kushadvipam, so on and so forth. And we are living in Jambudvipam. That's where India is situated. Jambudvipam. Moving on. Varaha Puranam also elaborates about the legend of Matsyavataram. Varaha Puranam elaborates Agastya Gita. Just like how Bhagavad Gita is narrated by Sri Krishna, there is a compendium of life lessons elaborated by Agastya Maharshi and is called as Agastya Gita. And Agastya Gita is an integral part of Varaha Puranam. And then we have Rudra Gita as well, narrated by Lord Shiva. Rudra Gita is also a compendium of philosophies and life lessons given down by Lord Shiva and an integral part of Varaha Puranam. Varaha Puranam also gives enumeration of various Tirtha Kshetras or pilgrimage sites across Bharat, and it also details about various sacred rituals. And that, in short, is the synopsis of Varaha Puranam. Up next, number 13, Skanda Puranam. It is the largest of all the 18 Puranas, and I cannot emphasize enough the importance of Skanda Puranam. It is so huge, so wide, so deep, and so complex. It has thousands of chapters. It has more than 1 lakh shlokas. In terms of its volume, it is 4 times bigger than Sri Ramayana. What you are seeing here is not even 0.001% of Skanda Puranam. Nonetheless, I tried to articulate my best. So it talks about the history of Kedarnath, Tirupati, Puri, Ujjain, Badrinath, Ayodhya, Prabhasa Kshetra, Dwaraka, Varanasi, enumeration of various tirthas in Bharat, and the history of Arunachalam. You name it. Almost every sacred place in Bharat has a place in Skanda Puranam. Almost every festival that we celebrate has a reference from Skanda Puranam. It's huge. I rest my case. Let's move forward.
Looks like this big.
Up next, number 14 is Vamana Puranam. It talks about the destruction of Daksha Yajnam. Let me take a quick sidestep. Daksha Yajnam is a very important event that led to emergence of the 18 Shakti Pithas, the shift of Agastya Maharshi to the south of Vindhyas, thus establishing the Tamil culture and language. So there are many important events tied up to Daksha Yajnam, and that is the reason it is elaborated so many times in so many Puranas. So let's move forward. So Vamana Puranam also talks about the geography of Jambudvipam, Bharatavarsham, and a lot more. It talks about the legend of Naranarayana in Badrinath, the legend of Saraswati River, Shiva and Uma Kalyanam, birth of Kartikeya, the legend of Bali Chakravarti. For those of you who are from Kerala and you celebrate Onam, the foundational text is essentially Vamana Puranam that elaborates the legend of Bali Chakravarti. And also, as the name goes, it also explains about the legend of Vamana Avataram. That, in short, is all about Vamana Puranam. Up next, number 15 is Garuda Puranam. Now, before I move any forward, I'm sure you would have watched the movie Onion, Raparichitudu or Aparichit, in which the movie is kind of centrally based on the theme of Garuda Puranam, talking about hell and punishments and whatnot. Just come out of that for a minute and let's try to understand what are the real contents of Garuda Puranam. Garuda Puranam elaborates about the legend of Hayagriva, an avatar of Vishnu, who's the bestower of all the great supreme knowledge. And then it elaborates at extensive detail. I think I have to repeat the word extensive detail at least 2 or 3 times. At that detail about formulating antidotes for different kinds of poisons. My God, you will just go mad if you start reading Garuda Puranam. The amount of shlokas that are dedicated to deal with different kinds of poisons and how you formulate antidotes for each and every kind of poison is just mind-blowing.
Okay, I want this. Like, I want it just to have on my shelf that
I
I,
know,
can
I know.
crack it open when the mood's just right and be like, oh, look at this.
Yeah, I know, I
different
know.
antidotes to poisons, and then like pair it with some cool artwork of that same ilk.
Yeah.
Maybe that's me
I'm curious
fetishizing it.
about
Maybe
that.
that was real creepy. Sorry.
Yeah,
everybody.
yeah. No, I hear what you're saying. I like the idea of being able to like pull something in, and I like books better than something on a phone or on a computer. I like actually having the physical book.
I'm just
to
as
open
brazen
up.
with even just before anyone gets upset. Like I go to the museum and check out the illuminated texts, which are Christian in nature.
Yeah. But no, I hear what you say, because there are some things in here that I'm like, I want to read that. Like the science of music chapter, when he was talking about that looked super cool. And some of like the dangers of practicing yoga like the wrong way.
Yeah.
And like I'd like to get into head of some of the like what the author's trying to say there. There's so much here, and just the history. I like history too, so paired with some cool artwork.
I know, right?
Anyway,
and some incense too to top it off.
Talks at extensive length about different kinds of poisons and how to formulate antidotes for different kinds of poisons. That's what Garuda Puranam talks about. It explains the philosophy of Vastu, it explains the architecture and engineering of temples, and then it also deals about gemology, that is, how to test a gem for its purity. It could be diamond, emerald, sapphire, ruby, whatever the precious stone is. For each and every precious stone, how should you perform the purity test to tell whether the gem is of good quality or not? All that is detailed in Garuda Purana. And then we have rituals for atonement or prayaschitta for different kinds of sins is elaborated in Garuda Puranam, and then sacred rituals of Adi Shakti, Shiva, Vishnu, diagnosis of different kinds of ailments, Ayurvedic practices and formulation of medicines for different kinds of diseases. The philosophy and practice of yoga is also elaborated in Garuda Puranam. And then comes the topic that we all are familiar about, Garuda Puranam. There is a section in this scripture called as Preta Khandam, in which the punishments that the Atma will be receiving in the hell based on his or her karma of the past life. And it elaborates different kinds of punishments for different kinds of sins that one's soul or Atma has to undergo in the hell. That is just one part of Garuda Purana. It also elaborates about the complete story of Sri Ramayana and the complete story of Mahabharatam as well. So that in short is all about Garuda Purana. There are a lot of conceptions about Garuda Puranam that it should not be read by everybody or it should not be read under normal circumstances, so on and so forth. I don't have any scholarly authority to comment on that, but one thing I can say for sure is during the COVID, when Bharat has been distributing the vaccines under the Vaccine Maitri program, every COVID vaccination box had the Sanskritam lines printed on it. It calls Sarve Sam Tuniramaya. That means may we all live a healthy life together. And those words, Sarve Sam Tuniramaya, is picked up from Garuda Purana. It is meant for everybody. That's just a positive note I want to share about Garuda Puranam with all of you. Up next, number 16, Kurma Puranam. Kurma Puranam elaborates Ishvara Gita. Again, a compendium of philosophies and life lessons given by Mahadev. And Ishvara Gita is a part of Kurma Puranam. And Kurma Puranam also elaborates on digression of time, the time division and computation. It talks about the legend of Varaha Avataram, Parvati Sahasranamam, the legends of Shiva Ganas, the conversation between Krishna and Shiva, the legend of various Shivalingas across Bharat, the geography and astronomy, details of all the events across different Manvantaras, the legend of 28 Vyasa Maharshis. Again, in this Puranam, the 28 Vyasa Maharshis are quoted and explained for their works. And then the legend of Namdishwara. This, in short, is all about the contents of Kurma Puranam. Up next, number 17, Matsya Puranam. There is a very special trait for Matsya Purana. It talks about the lineages of Surya, Chandra, Yadava, Kosala, Maurya, Sunga and many other dynasties in a very linear format as to who inherited from whom. That bloodline is not broken. It is continuously narrated like who came from whom, this entire chain of dynasties. That's a very special quality of Matsya Puranam which is rarely found in any other Puranas. And then again it details about the sacred rituals for the worship of Vishnu, Shiva, Adi Shakti, etc. It talks about statecraft, polity and public administration, how should a king treat his subjects, so on and so forth. Talks about the architecture and engineering behind the temples and forts and other public living spaces. It talks about the geography of ancient world. And finally, the last one, the 18th Puranam, Brahmanda Purana. It talks about different kalpas, manvantaras and other time divisions. It talks about the genesis of creation, geography of the world and Bharat, the legends of the Saptarishis, the 7 celestial sages, and the legends of each of the Saptarishis. And then Brahmanda Puranam also enumerates all the Punya Tirthas or the pilgrimage sites across Bharat, and then sacred rituals to the Pitrudevas, the legend of Parashurama, the legend of Manu and his progeny, the legend of river Ganga, the legends of various Prajapatis and their progeny. And again, just like Linga Puranam, Brahmanda Puranam also gives the scientific elucidation of Sangeetam, how the pitch and frequency of each musical note will create a specific emotional impact, is elaborated in great detail in Brahmanda Purana. And then comes the explanation about the dynasty of Ikshvaku, the dynasty of Vrishni, and then the last, but the one which has highest spiritual significance, Lalita Sahasranamam, is an integral part of Brahmanda Purana. Sri Vedavyasa Maharshi encoded 1000 names of Adishakti in the form of Lalita Sahasranamam and made it an integral part of Brahmanda Purana. That is a very quick and synoptical view about the 18 Puranas authored by Sri Vedavyasa Maharshi. It will take a lifetime for one to really read through these 18 huge, great, grand scriptures that are compendiums of various aspects of science, philosophy, art, music, and whatnot. I just want to share one of my experiences with you, which is very important. Let me just do that. Couple of months ago, I did a documentary on this channel called as The Human Anatomy as Given in Shiva Purana. I was really baffled when I came across Shiva Purana for the first time on this subject. Month by month, how a human embryo or the fetus gets developed in the womb of a mother is elaborated in Shiva Purana at great detail, which exactly concurs with the modern day understanding of how the development of fetus happens in a mother's womb. It is exactly the same, almost. I did a word by word, slokam by slokam translation in the documentary. If you're interested, go and check. Else, I just want to keep the message short here. What is the genesis of human life in the mother's womb is elaborated in Shiva Purana. It talks about the umbilical cord, it talks about the embryonic skin, it talks about the placenta, it also talks about how many bones and muscles the fetus would develop over month on month in the mother's womb. All this is an integral part of Shiva Purana, written by Vedavyasa Maharshi. The foundations of the modern day understanding about how the fetus gets developed in the mother's womb over a period of time goes back into history at max at around 1500s. That's when Leonardo da Vinci started drawing the human anatomy, how it would look like. And over last 600 years or so, we got evolved to the state where we are. But the oldest known manuscript, I repeat the word, the oldest known manuscript of the Shiva Puranam itself dates more than 1,000 years. And Shiva Puranam is many thousands of years old, which elucidates the development of human fetus. I was really baffled when I studied this for the first time. Starting from the mala, which is like the human excretion, it goes up the levels of from Malamutra to Nadi Vyavastha to the flows of prana and rasa, Sharira Dhatus, Garbhadharana, Garbha Parivruddhi, Garbhastha Narakam, and finally Shiva Jnanam. So it is a totally an intertwined concept of biology and philosophy, both in the line of Shiva Jnanam. That's what is Shiva Puranam saying about the human aspect as well as the philosophical aspect or the spiritual aspect. And not just Shiva Puranam, there is also another Upanishad, part of Atharvana Vedam, called as Garbha Upanishad. And this Upanishad also talks about the development of fetus month on month, and this was authored by Maharshi Pippalada. And Garbha Upanishad is part of Vedas that is much higher than the Puranic references. Back in 1920, that's approximately more than 100 years ago, Paul Deussen, a German scholar, did research on the Upanishads that we have in Bharat, and he explicitly wrote at length about Garbha Upanishad, where it talks about the development of fetus in the mother's womb and in more scientific terms about the embryology. Now, to summarize, what I want to tell is we have the knowledge systems that are really beyond comprehension of human intelligence. You don't have to over romanticize every ancient scripture and forcefully find scientific elements in each and every scripture. Neither you should ignore saying that all this is trash or mythology. Both are extreme stances. I want to urge all my viewers to take a balanced approach and really discover the treasure of knowledge what we have in Bharat and what we have been inheriting from the great rishis and sages over the past hundreds of years, or rather thousands of years. So that's about the 18 Puranas in brief, about its content, structure, composition, and most importantly, the essence. I hope the younger generations of Bharat develop an unbiased worldview and an inquisitive learning approach towards the ancient knowledge systems of Bharat, which unequivocally establishes why Bharat has been called as a Veda Bhumi, the land of knowledge, and most importantly, how we put that knowledge for the betterment of humanity. That is what Puranas teach us. And as always, thanks for watching.
Well, I think we should do a little field trip to chapters and go check the religion section.
You won't find it. I think it's I was in downtown Toronto at like a giant bookstore looking for stuff like this, and I could not find it. I could not find
That's
it.
insane. So where do we go?
Probably have to order it online.
What? No, I want to go into the place and sort through and look at the cover.
I don't know
of
if
the book.
that even exists around you. Well, it probably does. You would just have to know the right place to go to. So that you're right. Maybe it's a field trip that we need to make to go hunt down some of this stuff. But yeah, I'm intrigued. It seems to me like there's some bragging rights sometimes on like being the first to like find something. He brought up the embryo thing. I remember we did a Muslim reaction where it talks about that in the Quran too, and they were very proud that like that was there too, right? And
it is cool.
It's cool, yeah.
Very cool.
Like it's cool that we've had that information for so long. And
I think that there's one out there that, and it might even be in Hinduism, that goes into like there's an argument to be made that what it's really talking about is like microbiology. It goes into like how that there's tiny worlds beneath. I don't know where that's from, but you can, if you sift through these things, right? But to me, I would be leery almost of bragging rights to do with something.
Yeah, I know.
Whatever, do what thou will. Do what thou will, I guess.
It just seems sometimes like that seems to everyone's trying to be like, well, we were the first. Does it matter?
It's the stupid things that overtake the wise. It's the stupid idiots sometimes that will just, in their innocence, will just obliterate the whole thing. Lest you be too, but that doesn't mean it's not. If your heart's in it, go nuts. If your heart is right and you do it with a pure heart, be the greatest scholar. Be the guy that's in the picture there. All the wisdom. Go for it. I'm sure it would be of a lot of help.
Yeah,
human thesaurus.
Super cool. I'm definitely there's going to be more of this that I'll look into over the years to come. And piece by piece, we let this stuff
I hope you all liked it.
And we grow on it. So hopefully you liked our reaction, guys. If you did, please don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, share this with a friend, and everyone till next time, stay spiritual.